know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I am your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we... this is going to be a different one. So, normally... normally, this is the show where we assign our guests a year, and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, etc. album from that year for us to talk about. But today, we have our very first Patreon album selection. Yes, that's right. We finally tricked someone into giving us some money.
Yes, we have had this tier on our Patreon since we started it, where if you put your money down, you get to pick what we talk about. And we've given people the option that will be a main episode. So hopefully you'll listen to this and be inspired to sign up for our Patreon. But no one took that offer, and so we dropped the price, and immediately got nabbed. So
like instantaneously, like I put it was originally $25, I knocked it down to $10, and then it was gone like immediately. And it was snagged up by our friend, past guest, Dave Brown. Dave Brown runs Oklahoma Lefty, and he also has a podcast called Sacred Panels. Very good comic-based podcast. Oklahoma Lefty is a great music blog. I think he's done some like recordings involving that blog as well. And so we basically are like, hey, Dave, you picked it. Now tell us what you want us to talk about. And then he sent a list of 19 albums. I think he had a hard time deciding. So we kind of used a little bit of a classic rubric for deciding rubric by using a number generator. We each picked one with a number generator, and then I gave those options to him. And then he was still like, well, I like this, but I don't like this. And so then I was like, I think we'll go with the one we're talking about today, because it seems like it's a more important record to you. So actually, in this podcast here, you will hear from Dave himself. He's actually going to record something and send it over to us. Now, if you want to do this, you don't have to do that either. You don't have to record it and send it. Though if you wanted to, you could be a guest. It's literally up to you.
if you wanted to write something and we'll read it on the show, we definitely want to hear from you as to why you're picking the records that you're picking. Yeah. I mean, even if it's just to punish us.
Yeah. We know some friends who would do that. But yeah, so this is our first time, so I wanted to make sure it was a good one. So I did some research, and I'm hoping there's a lot there. There's a lot more there than I anticipated, but I can get into that later. You can go to that Patreon, and it is patreon.com/punklautopod, and then the idea of it's a $10 right now. That will it'll probably stay that way for a little bit. We only offer one a month, just because it's in order to do guests. We wouldn't really want to do more than one a month anyway. Dave currently has it on lockdown, so we'll see if he relinquishes it for next month. But
yeah, Dave's picks on a monthly basis.
But though, if you don't want to spend that much money, you can give us $1 over there and get access to all of our bonus audio. We do one bonus audio a week. This week we just recorded it, a deep dive on the year 2011, which is in association with the record that we're talking about today.
Yes, did a chart dive, good old fashioned rate your music chart meandering conversation. A lot to talk about though.
Yeah, it's a very dense year for picks, so very exciting. And yeah, that's Patreon, Punk Lotto Pod. We have all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all that good stuff, at Punk Lotto Pod. Dylan's got a Substack that he...
Substack, you just follow it, whatever.
Yeah.
Sign up, you'll get one if you get one.
Email address, punklaudibot@gmail.com, and a voicemail, 202-688-PUNK. Google Voice had to tell me. It's the yearly, you haven't used your voicemail line in 6 months. We'll take it away from you unless you use it. So I had to text myself and then text back to it to make it keep it for another 6 months. We mainly primarily use it for January for best of the year stuff. So,
But you can leave us a voicemail.
Mm-hmm. You can. Dave, you can leave us a voicemail there. Well, no, we've already sent his recording by the time this episode goes up. But before we get into the album that Dave picked, the record he chose came out in the year 2011, so we kind of want to do more of a... we just did a chart dive on the year 2011, but we decided we would also look at what the first 2 pages of results are, and also something a little bit more related to our album today.
Now who'd have thought that after all, something as simple as rock and roll would save us all? Now who'd have thought that after all, it was rock and roll? I finally figured out I need to be around these sights and sounds. I've been away for too long. So I gave my head to take you home. I had no hope to give. I've been bad, I know, and I'm sorry. You can smell the smoke reaching my skin. Well, I had my way with the amenities that are breaking loose guns on my can. Rain on my bed away. Avoid all my pain today.
So, 2011, in our deep dive, we discovered that it was still very much an emo revival time period, but also, like, personally, on our kind of way out of that kind of stuff. The orgcore sound was still pretty strong.
Yeah. A lot of atmospheric sludge and hardcore stuff happening. I think looking at the charts, we'll kind of touch on all of those things
Yeah.
on the first 2 pages as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, Andrew Jackson Jihad, or AJJ as they're known now, released Knife Man, the last best AJJ record. The newest record was pretty good, but it was also a protest album, so it's not going to age well. But Knife Man is a very strong record.
yeah, they still play quite a few of these songs. Hate Rain on Me is kind of a classic at this point. Skate Park. Which of the Bird songs do they normally play? Is it Big Bird? It's Big Bird.
Yeah. Yep, Big Bird gets played pretty regularly. Another big record would be La Dispute's Wildlife. Out of the La Dispute stuff you've listened to, did you listen to this one? I feel like you probably did.
Maybe.
I may have. I don't know. I don't remember.
I
It's
really
their most popular record.
Yeah, I didn't really like La Dispute, so I don't think I ever really got into this one. I probably listened to it once, but I did listen to that Death Heaven record.
Oh, yeah?
Worth mentioning since their new record just came out.
Did that inspire your Jeff Heaven tweet yesterday?
I definitely listened to Roads to Judah, Black Gaze, post-rock, post-metal, sort of screamo-ish. I dug it then, but I don't know. I didn't really get into that band the way everyone else did.
Joyce Manor released their self-titled album. I don't think that album was as popular in 2011 as it has become retroactively popular, thanks to Joyce Manor's kind of like sustained attention and critical praise. And I like this era of Joyce Manor the best, the very early stuff. Though, to be honest, I haven't dove too deep on the later era stuff, so, you know, there could be some good stuff there that I'm just missing.
Yeah, I never got into Joyce Manor. I saw this album cover all the time on Tumblr, but I don't know that I ever listened to it. I think I heard some songs and was like, it's all right. And I wasn't interested in that at that time, and then they got really popular. So I was like, whatever. That's your band now, everybody else.
Blink-182 released Neighborhoods. Is that supposed to be a bad record? Someone was talking about it just recently.
Yeah, it's
before Matt Skiba.
Yeah, it's the comeback record trying in a lot of ways to respond to what pop punk had done in the intervening years. Mark and Tom are both on the record, but from what I've heard, it's like super like stitched together. Like it was like trading tracks. Like they really did not work on this record together.
A massive record that's kind of actually stood up the test of time. Touche Amore's Party in the Sea Between Brightness and Me. Big deal the year it came out. Was this the first full-length? I guess To Beat a Dead Horse is considered a full-length, but I also remember when it was considered a demo. So it got released, probably remastered and re-released before Party in the Sea came out. But like Party in the Sea was the first like recorded as a record by them.
Yeah, it's the Death Wish record. I loved To Beat a Dead Horse. Like, really, really loved that record. I remember when this came out and being kind of disappointed and being like, well, there they go. Really on a down note on this chart so far. I do genuinely love Knife Man. That's a great record.
I think we're in the minority on this Touche Amore record, so
Yeah.
I don't take our.
This is the I've seen it called The Wave. This is one of those records that's part of that melodic hardcore kind of thing that happened here in the early 2010s.
Mm-hmm. And Fucked Up release David Comes to Life. Not as well regarded, but actually might be more well known. Interesting. Than Chemistry of Common Life and Hidden World. Yeah, this is probably the biggest point that they were at for the general music industry.
Yeah, this is the Tommy record, right?
Is it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's the rock opera.
Bomb the Music Industry released Vacation. These are really not our records. What were we listening to in 2011? Oh yeah, we talked about a lot of them.
Yeah.
They just weren't as popular. Pianos Become the Teeth released The Lack Long After. That's like the other one.
Ugh.
It's part of the wave.
I call it The Long Lackluster. I didn't like that one.
And then they changed their sound into sounding like a Christian and contemporary rock band.
Yeah.
Don't know how that happened. The Men released Leave Home. They were part of that like post White Stripes garage rock wave. Who else is in that wave? Mets are in that wave, I think.
Yeah.
I guess post Japan Droids too. Oh, Title Fight released Shed. That's part of the wave as well. Not for me.
That album cover. I've seen that so many times. Algernon put out Parrot Flies. And we mentioned this being kind of our tail end of our dedicated interest in the emo revival. But I remember enjoying this record. I liked Cadwallader. Like Algcad.
The Wonder Years released Suburbia, I've Given You All and Now I Am Nothing. It was a really big deal when it came out. We talked about them briefly on the Patreon in reference to Fireworks' connection to them. It's probably the most well-known, though actually it looks like Greatest Generation is more well-known, surprisingly. And then No Closer to Heaven was sold in Target, so... But Suburbia was kind of like the peak Wonder Years.
On the next page, Trap Them put out Darker Handcraft. So there's your crust. Lots of crust going on in 2011.
Yeah. All the hardcore bands switched to being crust bands.
You know, it's funny, people talk about the melodic hardcore wave and the emo revival, the whatever wave of emo you want to call it. No one talks about the crust revival that definitely was a thing. No one calls it crust revival. I guess because crust bands have always existed. But there was definitely a shift of the cultural window of punk and hardcore framed crust bands.
Yeah.
For a solid 5 years.
It was the post-Cursed crowd. You know, all the bands that were borrowing from Cursed were also like, hey, Cursed has some crust too. And so they started borrowing that from Cursed's influences. Here's a record that's really cool. Wild Flag, which is basically a super group. It's Carrie Brownstein from Sleater-Kinney, Mary Timony from now X-Hex. Helium, I guess, is probably her most well-known band she was part of. Janet Weiss. Is Janet Weiss also in Sleater-Kinney? Yes, she was. I believe she's the one who's left the band.
Yeah, she was the drummer who left.
Mm-hmm. And Rebecca Cole, who was in the Minders. Don't really know her very well. It's a good record, though. It's a really cool kind of like mix-up of what Helium was doing and what Sleater-Kinney were doing. It's like they had a couple singles, but in 2011 as well, but they didn't really do much else. This is like a one-off, like, super group thing. But neat record.
I always get Wild Flag mixed up with that band Wild Moth.
Really?
Do you remember them? It's just the name, I guess, but...
Yeah. I used to get them mixed up with... Isn't there another band with white in their name? There's White Flag, but that's also an old band. Yeah.
Live the Dream by Ramshackle Glory.
There's your other folk punk entries.
The ubiquitous Pat the Bunny.
Yeah. Defeater, Empty Days and Sleepless Nights.
That's a good one.
What we used to... Nice Effort Guys.
Yeah.
For those who remember the Buzz Grinder.
No one remembers that.
No one remembers that. Was that Jay Donito's joke?
Yeah.
Yeah. In case you didn't know, you take a picture of a house, or like it was almost always houses, wasn't it?
It was always just like... It was always just something that was minimal effort.
Yeah.
For an album cover. Yeah, it was just like, hey, we took a picture, and that's the album cover. And it's not even like a very remarkable picture, usually.
I think it became a running joke that houses were almost always the thing. And the joke was basically Nice Effort Guys. And it was, we named our EP after that joke because we put a house on the front.
Yeah. There's a reason no one liked us.
Yeah. Basement, I Wish I Could Stay Here. That was a big deal at the time. They were Basement a British band or were they a Boston band? Am I mixing up Basement with Bangers?
Basement was the UK band, yeah.
I think Bangers were too. Yeah, Basement UK emo band. They were kind of like the foreign exchange student for the emo revival. They were sent over here to be big. Frank Turner, Dave will probably appreciate this one a lot. Released England Keep My Bones. Is this the most well-known Frank Turner record? I feel like it's the one I saw the most.
It's the album cover that comes to mind when I think of Frank Turner records.
Yeah. Looks like, it's probably the most popular one according to Rate Your Music. It's not necessarily... Well, yeah, it's not the most critically acclaimed one. Love Iron Song is the most acclaimed one. Personally, he never really did much for me. I might save this a little bit later, but like I have a hard time getting into singer-songwriters, but I'll talk about it with our record. There's one you liked, though.
Ampere?
Mm-hmm.
I love Ampere. We say that anytime Ampere shows up. So
yeah.
Like Shadows is a killer record. Super fast. Screamo. Just great. Will Killingsworth. Enough said.
Mm-hmm. Oathbreaker released Maelstrom. Oathbreaker, I feel like we're a bigger deal. I feel like Death Haven kind of stole Oathbreaker's thunder. They also went in a different direction than Oathbreaker. Well, okay. Story So Far released Under Soil and Dirt. That is kind of what pop punk was doing in 2011. This is a little after the Defend pop punk sound, but like loosely associated with that sound. Kind of, I don't know if this is as much easycore, but kind of looped in there.
Weekend Nachos put out Worthless. I feel like you had to be there for Weekend Nachos.
Yeah.
I think I say Weekend Nachos whenever they come up, and they're not a Touchstone band. I don't know. No. Maybe they are.
But yeah, that's kind of some big stuff. If you want to hear us talk about the rest of the stuff that came out in 2011, check out our Patreon over there. But do we want to talk about this other stuff, or should we intro the album first?
Let's intro the album first, and then we'll talk about its connection to that.
Okay, for sure. All right, well, we didn't give Dave a year. We let him have free reign, and then he had too many choices. So he gave us John Moreland and the Dust Bowl Souls, Everything the Hard Way.
What's up, posers? My name is Dave, and I am the one who decided to drop a solid 10 spot to have the boys talk about the record that I wanted them to talk about, which in this case happened to be John Moreland and the Dust Bowl Souls, Everything the Hard Way. Now, of course, because I am challenging, I didn't send them just one record. No. I had to send them a few. So I sent them a nice handy email with a bunch to choose from, thinking, hey, just pick one that sounds good to you. And of course, I had some of my favorites in there, and had to show some local boys some attention and some love. See, and by local, I'm referring to Oklahoma because that's where I live. And I think it was Dylan decided, you know what, let's just do this old school Punk Lotto Pod way. And they threw them in a blender, and they picked one. Actually, they ended up picking two, and they decided to go ahead and go with this album, Everything the Hard Way, by John Moreland and the Dust Bowl Souls, which is a tremendous album. If you have never heard this, and you only know John Moreland through his singer-songwriter, folk alt-country stuff, then you are missing out. This is definitely an alt-country, more punk rock record than his other solo material. Another thing a lot of people don't know is that Mr. Moreland actually has more than just 5 full-length albums. He recorded 2 with his band, the Black Gold Band, and then 1 with the Dust Bowl Souls. Interestingly, and I actually forgot to mention this tidbit in a brand new podcast that I'm putting together. Our first episode happened to be about John Moreland. I knew I was going to have to talk about Mr. Moreland for this, and I figured, why not you do him as my first episode of One Band, 5 Songs. Check that out. It's over on the Spotify. Anyway, basically the same guys who played on Everything the Hard Way also played on John Moreland's quintessential perfection album, his tour de force, his, oh my God, I forgot what it's called. I did this when I recorded my episode too. I forgot when it's the best of something. It's your magnum opus, his magnum opus, In the Throes. It's to borrow something I said in my episode, if we're talking the Dave Meltzer 5-star scale, In the Throes is a 6-star album. Now, Everything the Hard Way, I would give 4.5, 4 3/4. It really has everything you want out of John Moreland. It's got songs that rock. It's got a few songs with him just plucking away on his acoustic guitar. And it has his sweet, sweet voice and, just heart-wrenching lyrics. And he just dives into subjects in such a beautiful and perfect way. I can't say enough good things about him. I mean, I have in the past said he's probably the single best songwriter alive today. Certainly based on this album, In the Throes, and the follow-up to In the Throes, High on Tulsa Heat, based on that 2011 through 2015. I would stand by that opinion. He's had a couple other records since then. Well, one of them is very, very good, and one of them's okay. So if you want to hear more about old Johnny Boy, head over to my podcast, talk all about him. But that's not why you're here. And I do have to ask a question. If you are hearing this episode, that means you have plopped down and are a patron. You have joined the Patreon for the Punk Lotto podcast. And if you are a patron, are you also a poser? Gentlemen, can you answer that question? Thanks for letting me be part of your show. I really enjoy it. Always enjoy what you guys do, and hope you are well. Hope the post-apocalyptic world is treating you nicely. And Dylan, have a safe move as you go out to Cali. I think I'll go listen to some LL Cool J. Take care, guys.
I'm a heart, no common sense. The world, it just don't work like this. And I've been low. Yeah, I've been low. Every day is longer than the one before we hit the floor. And I've been low. Yeah, I've been low. Getting by on principle. I killed that dream years ago. Maybe
basics on this real quick. John Moreland is a Tulsa, Oklahoma-based singer-songwriter. This was released on Okie Tone Records in 2011. Person on this record is John Moreland on guitar and vocals, Mike Williams on bass and vocals, and Steve Walden on drums, and was produced by the band and Ryan Wallace. So according to the Oklahoma Music Archives wiki, because there's a whole wiki for that, this lineup existed from 2010 to 2011. So this is the only thing this band has released. Though that being said, John Moreland has a lot of records.
Yes.
So, singer-songwriter, primarily. He had another band, which I think even may have the same members. I believe it's called John Moreland and the Black Gold Band. And it's very much in the same tone as this record. So this record is a more rootsy Americana heartland rock record.
Yeah. I would call it an alt-country record.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's alt-country elements, for sure. Yeah, it could be alt-country. It's also what we've lovingly referred to as heartland rock.
Heartland punk, even.
Yeah, he has punk connections, which I'll get into in a little bit. But, so I guess this is where we can talk about this record's relationship to 2011 in the country and country adjacent genres. So we kind of pulled up the charts for 2011 country country records and records influenced by country. So that gives you a pretty wide scope of the type of things that are going on in the landscape that John Moreland was operating in. So I guess the biggest name, Wilco released The Whole Love that year. Wilco is alternative alt country. This one's kind of tagging as indie rock. I guess earlier Wilco was more alt country than the later stuff.
Yeah.
But the Uncle Tupelo connection probably is a bigger influence on John Moreland's sound on this record than Wilco specifically.
Yeah. The top four on here are barely country.
Yeah, I mean, the Decemberists are on there. The King is Dead. My Morning Jacket, Circuital.
Yeah. There's a Bill Callahan record, also known as Smog. He mostly releases records under his own name, but so 2011 country, if you're excluding mainstream radio country, was very folky. Mm-hmm. Gillian Welch has a very folky looking record.
Civil Wars.
The Civil Wars is basically just a folk record.
Yeah, barely country.
I mean, there's a little bit of... Did they do that with T-Bone?
I think so, yeah.
So there's that, his influence. There's a Lucinda Williams record that I'm not very familiar with, but that would be pretty close. That and then the Drive-By Truckers record would actually be very close to the record that we're talking about. As well as The Horrible Crows put out their, which is the Brian Fallon solo trial run. More heartlandy Americana, a lot of soul influence, and Jason Isbell.
Yeah, this is a time period where alt country folky stuff was really big in the left of the dial scene. Basically your independent radio stations were playing a lot of this kind of music. I don't know. It's interesting. I wonder why that was such a big sound, especially at this point. Steve Earle released a record that year, I'll Never Get Out of This World Alive, which I want to say Steve Earle was a big influence on John Moreland as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There's an Alison Krauss record. I mean, she's closer and more to bluegrass.
Well, that's kind of the thing. So Americana as a genre really formulates in the 90s. And you've got some breakthroughs. You've got your Wallflowers and stuff like that in the 90s. And then Oh Brother, Where Art Thou introduces people to bluegrass and old-timey music. And you have this whole wave of Alison Krauss being really successful. And you have tons of bluegrass, newgrass, and very traditionally focused folk and country-ish music for the next 10 years. And when you combine that with the fact that post 9/11 country music is just a fucking shit show on the radio of just ass-kicking, wannabe ass-kicker douche bros that country radio has not recovered from. I mean, there have been little pockets of like, all right, that's decent, but by and large, it's dead. So there's this, and I feel like indie rock kind of does this thing. I mean, there's the Baroque pop kind of like folksy twee kind of stuff that's big in indie rock for a long time, and then you really start to get some singer-songwriter types like Amos Lee, Ray LaMontagne, Iron and Wine getting successful, and I feel like that's kind of where Americana country folky music has another big cultural breakthrough. Because if you're looking for a more authentic sounding country music, this is where you'll find it. It's not coming out of Nashville. It's coming from everywhere else.
With more independent, liberal, leftist mindsets too than the mainstream country scene. So I feel like it is. It's just more people going like, I like country music. I grew up on country music. I hate what's on country radio right now because of the type of audience that they're appealing to. So that's why you get stuff like Deer Tick, or, I was looking at this list and I was like, shit, I was still working at Barnes & Noble, and these albums all came out that year. The Low Anthem, Middle Brother, and Blind Pilot. They all came out that year. They were all in-store plays at my store. We played them a lot. I played them a lot because it was like, hey, I can like this kind of stuff and not want to rip my hair out. It's also worth noting Chuck Ragan released Covering Ground in 2011.
Yeah. And
John Moreland comes from punk music, an extension of punk music, which I'm saving so much goodness for later, before we really get into that record. So John has always been more associated with your Chuck Ragan types.
Yeah.
Like your Chuck Regans, your John Snodgrasses, your Chad Prices, your, a lot of those guys. Your Luceros.
Yeah.
Was there a Lucero in 2011?
No.
It's like the one off year. Between them and Drive-By Truckers, it's always like an alternating. They take turns. So he comes from punk music. He's associated with other punk musicians, but he's also part of that revival thing that was going on in the punk scene, where all the punks who grew up in the South started playing, country music, basically folk music.
Yeah.
You mentioned
another thing that's kind of happening in the Americana world. There's a lot of roots rocky stuff that is very much in line with this record. Sally Ford and the Sound Outside has a record that came out that I distinctly remember hearing on WNCW. I remember seeing Sally Ford open for the Avett Brothers at a New Year's Eve concert in Asheville, which, if you understood all of those things together and what they mean, that sounds exactly like this time period. The other big thing I wanted to point out, where is it? Carrie Ann Hurst has a solo record that came out in 2011. Carrie Ann Hurst is one half of Shovels and Rope. So this is before Shovels and Rope really takes off, though they had a record that came out in 2008, I want to say. But then Oh Be Joyful comes out in 2012, and that's a really, really big record for Americana in the teens, the 20-teens.
Light of the moon and the marquee. Cup in hand, gets a cigarette lit. We used to hear tales of danger, but never encountered it.
So let's kind of refocus a little bit back on John Moreland and this record in particular. So, do you have any prior feelings or thoughts or just even like opinions on John Moreland prior to listening to this record?
I had no idea who he was.
Was the name familiar at all?
Nope.
Okay. So I recognize the name. One, because of Dave, primarily. Dave really loves John Moreland's music. He's a huge fan. Being from Oklahoma, I sense there's a little bit of connection there as far as like being from Dave's state. So there's definitely an appreciation there. Local hero. But the fact, too, that he has a Descendants connection. So...
What?
So, John Moreland has his solo records. He has the Black Gold Band. He has this Dust Bowl Souls. He has more solo records now, which are more traditional country, folk, acoustic, singer-songwriter stuff. This is like full band rock and roll type stuff. He was, he contributed to the 7 Degrees of Stephen Egerton, if you remember that record, where every song was a different singer. He contributed lyrics and his voice. He contributed lyrics to one song on that album, and he contributed his voice to 2 songs on there. So Chad Price is on that record, John Snodgrass is on that record. So that's why my brain is always like, he's kind of one of those punk guys who does folk. He's also contributed vocals to Austin Lucas's Between the Moon and the Midwest. Mm-hmm. He was featured on Shovels and Ropes' Busted Jukebox Volume 2 on the song Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Oh.
He's the singer on that one.
I did not pay attention to the track listing on that record.
He played with Lucero and Jason Isbell live. He's been name dropped by Rachel Maddow and Miranda Lambert. Like, they say they are fans of his music. Miranda Lambert apparently is like a really big fan of John Moreland's music. He's had songs featured in Sons of Anarchy. He's had like 3 songs on that show.
Okay. That would make sense.
He has, the punk connection's there. It makes sense now. Well, I discovered this, and this is probably my favorite thing. This actually collides our 2 worlds. So, he played guitar in a band called 30 Called Arson. I went to the Spotify page for that band, and one of the associated artists on that page was Embodiment. Embodiment were a Texas death grind metalcore band on Solid State Records.
That turned into an alternative rock band.
It did, yeah. So Oklahoma, Texas, there's some connection there. I was like, okay, what? And then every other band on there was like a metal band or a metalcore band. So 30 Called Arson was a metalcore band on Pluto Records, which was a Texas record label. So this is my favorite part. So that's how you connect. Like, metalcore band from Oklahoma is probably playing shows with Embodiment around the same time period. Totally makes sense. Then I looked into who it was in 30 Called Arson. 30 Called Arson features Aaron Kennedy, who played on Frail Words Collapse by As I Lay Dying. He's a guitarist on that record.
Weird.
One of the early guitarists on As I Lay Dying stuff. Louis DeBook, who is the synth artist The Secret Handshake, which is a Triple Crown musician, was also in that band. That band also features Steve Walden and Michael Williams, who are in this band. So this is kind of a reunion with his 30 Called Arson bandmates. So, do you know who Michael Williams is?
No.
So not only was he in the Black Gold Band, and he's on this record, he also contributes to John's solo record, Hope Springs Ephemeral. Excuse me. He's also the lead singer of the Agony Scene.
What?
Michael Williams was the lead singer of the Agony Scene, and he plays guitar on this record. No, actually he plays bass. I think he's bass on this record, sorry.
Very weird.
Yeah. So this is him. He comes from metalcore.
Yeah. Metalcore turned
country.
Interesting.
Michael Williams of the Agony Scene is on this record. It was very funny. That was like the deep rabbit hole that I was just like, what is happening? So thanks, Dave. You actually accidentally connected us to our Christian music past again.
Sorry, everybody.
I also think 30 Called Arson was a Christian band too.
Yeah.
It was like their thing. Okay. So yeah. My prior feelings going into this record was I knew John Moreland as Dave is one artist that Dave really liked. I knew he was a singer-songwriter with some possible punk connections. And so when I was looking at the list of records that Dave sent us to choose from, I looked at one of John Moreland's solo records. Is High on Tulsa Heat was the album, and my initial thought was, it's good, but it's just singer-songwriter. So I don't know how I'm going to be able to talk about this entire thing. I have a hard time talking about like primarily acoustic singer-songwriter stuff, just because the emphasis in those kind of bands tends to be the lyrics and the voice, not so much the instrumentation. And I'm very much the instruments first guy. Like, even my approach to, like, vocals are the thing that makes me decide whether I'm going to like the band or dislike it. I'm also not really a lyrics guy. Like, I don't really pay attention to what the singer is usually saying in the song as I'm listening to it. I tend to treat the voice as just, like, another instrument on the album. And so it's just, I'm more focused on the tone and, like, just how they sing in general. So I was like, oh boy, I don't know how we're going to talk about an acoustic record. Thankfully, Dave was like, this isn't just a regular singer-songwriter record. And it's not. It is very much a full band alt country heartland rock record. And I straight up loved this record. This is extremely my shit.
Yeah, I thought while I was listening to it, like, when Justin asks me how I feel about this record, I'm going to come in, I loved it. It's really good.
It's great.
It's it's really good. I think that his songwriting is great. I think that his lyrics, I mean, just on one listen, a lot of lyrics jumped out and grabbed me. I think he's got some really interesting phrases, and I do want to go through some of the songs and pick out some of those lines and talk about them at some point on this episode. But I dig his voice. He's got that husky kind of drawl to it. I really love hearing a good country voice in a rock band. I love it. He reminds me a lot of, I'm trying to think of who his voice reminds me of someone specifically, but I'm drawing a blank on who. I mean, Chuck Ragan a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got that kind of tone.
There. I get a little Wallflowers. I get a little Jacob Dylan's voice.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more on the phrasing. There's a little Sunvolt, Sunvolt in there. I mean, Uncle Tupelo very much so. I feel like it shines through on this record. I think he was very, like I said earlier, he was very influenced by Steve Earle and Townes Van Zandt. So those are the type of people he grew up on. On 2 tracks on here, his voice very much reminded me of someone we know personally.
That's what it is.
Holy Ghost Haunted and Gods, especially. He sounds like Joseph Downs.
Yeah.
He sounds like our friend Joey. His voice is more gruff than Joey's. We've talked about Joseph Downs before on here. He is a local to Hickory singer-songwriter. He's also played in doom bands in the area. But his solo music is singer-songwriter, acoustic primarily. I don't know, is it almost a lisp? Like it's...
Yeah, there's a little bit
like
of the sibilance
on the tongue, yeah.
Which, again, another thing, I like sibilant singers. There's nothing wrong with it. You don't have to edit that shit out. You don't have to de-ess everything to where your voice sounds like a rubber band. It's fine to have some sibilance in your voice. They didn't edit out Tom Petty's sibilance. He sounds fucking great.
And I do. I hear Tom Petty. I hear Social Distortion. I hear the Replacements. I hear the Replacements especially on Hounds of Youth. I was like, that's just Bastards of Young. Like, it's that kind of song, you know? I hear High Water, which is a deep cut. The Punk's doing country, like Crowbait and Timeshares. Like, I hear a little bit of that stuff. I very, very, very much enjoyed listening to this record. I was kind of nervous because part of me was like, well, Dave picked a record. What happens if I don't like it? Luckily, I didn't have to do that because I actually liked it. So that's always the scare whenever a guest picks a record. It's always like, well, it's a big deal for you, but I'm not familiar with that Senses Fail album. Shout out to God Program.
Yeah, this is no effort needed to get into this one. It pretty much got me. And the first track was like, all right, this is is this going to be just singer-songwriter, but it's like a very short little track. And then the first song, the band kicks in. I think I messaged you right away. I was like, oh, good, there's drums.
I might have finally lost it. Got a head full of broken promises. Trying to come across something true, just to not think it through. And I don't think I'm gonna forget all the things that I ain't been yet. All the places I may never go, all the peace I may never know. Hounds of you, hounds of you. Cover the truth from the hounds of youth.
I can appreciate singer-songwriters with like good lyrics, but I always want instrumentation, more instrumentation than just voice and guitar. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate the other musical elements of this band. I especially really loved those, how much of the guitar playing is just like way down, first position, cowboy chords through a distorted amp. I love that sound. It reminds me of Husker Du, even like Bob Mould. It's all just like right there, right by the nut. Just there's something that happens harmonically to chords played in first position that it might be easier to borrow the chord further up the neck, and that's more of what you associate with like rock music is power chords. But those fully formed chords, all 6 strings ringing out, I love that. It's kind of a mess, and you have to really pay attention to get all of the little details of it, but really punches you in the face, and I love that sound.
Staying on the guitar work, like there are these big crunchy guitar riffs that like every time he hits one of those like palm muted little chick 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 chick, like one of those, I'm just like, hell yeah. I love a good, like, punk is essentially very palm mute heavy, and then when he's doing it on a country, and it happens on a country record or an alt country record, I'm like, it's extremely in a lane that I love. But then even like some of the solos on this record are just like, or the leads, because there's never like a true, I guess there's maybe like one solo that really stands out to me. I'm trying to see which track it's on. Low has a good twangy solo towards the end of the song. What I really, really liked about this was like those like real subtle harmonies that are on here. Like I think that's Mike Williams doing those harmonies as well. They're not super loud. They're low enough to the point where I thought maybe it was layered, but because there are some like vocal credits on here for the other guys, it was just like, okay, this is just like a real light backing like harmony that goes along with it. And like I really love how it sounds in like Young Love, Lost in a Flood, and Christmas Lights. I think Christmas Lights might be my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, Christmas Lights is really, really good. Yeah, that's definitely one of the best songs on the record. I like a lot of the ways that he weaves a lot of the same themes throughout the record. One of the big themes is definitely Christianity. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely like a kind of a God-haunted record, I guess you would call it, to use the more like academic term for a post-Christian, like not necessarily atheist, but kind of agnostic. I get the impression that he's agnostic from a lot of these lyrics.
I mean, there's a song called Holy Ghost Haunted on here.
Yeah.
Followed by a song called Gods, followed by a song called Christian Rock.
Yeah, Christian Rock has the really good line about, I'll just read this whole verse because I think it's great. Sometimes I feel like a fool in love, put on trial by Cool Kids Club, and then I wondered how I got the way I am, trying to fit the pieces in the puzzle. Remember the girls who acted untouchable because they dated singers in Christian rock bands. I just love that dated singers in Christian rock bands line.
The album does a good job too with not overstaying its welcome. Like, it's a 29-minute record. Like, that's the perfect length for this kind of album. Like, because this record is also very roots-driven, that type of sound has a habit of becoming samey, and this album does a good job of making sure to break it up in a way that, like, it avoids being samey. There is a point on the album where it kind of, like, gets me to, like, oh, it blended too quick into the next song, and I wasn't, like, it's one of those ones where, like, it changed songs and you didn't realize it. Like, the transition from Christian Rock to Christmas Lights, they, like, end and start such a similar way that, like, if it wasn't for the chorus on Christmas Lights that, like, you know, jolts you back to paying attention, that would probably be one of the weakest transitions. Because then he sprinkles in, like, the acoustic tracks. Like, after that is the acoustic song with, like, the harmonica and, like, the Springsteen-style lyrics, you know, about being 17. But then, like, Gods is an acoustic track. The album starts with an acoustic track that merges immediately right into Low. So, like, it did the sequencing perfect. Like, sequencing is crucial, and they, like, nailed it on this one.
Yeah. Once I kind of had an idea of, like, okay, this works with many of the colors in my go-to palette for music. Twangy, crunchy, down-to-earth themes. It's not centered on how can you describe confessional emo lyrics? Self-centered. Mm-hmm. It's coming from the perspective of someone who has lived mm-hmm. and seen a bit of the country, knows what it's like to live in a shitty place, mm-hmm. and love it.
There was an article I was reading with him in 2017. That's where I was reading the Miranda Lambert, like, was a big fan of his lyrics. Like, she said that he writes songs in a way that, like, connects to her very much. So that article was also talking about it being, like, his music is sad bastard music, but, and then around that time, he was like, I'm tired of playing sad bastard music. I want to play upbeat, happy music. So he made, like, a switch lyrically going forward from there. I don't get the sad bastard music. I mean, there's definitely some heartache in here. There's definitely some, you feel it, the down parts.
Well, it's not like, I mean, it's not wallowing in it. Like, I feel like it's, I feel like it's an honest reflection of where you are as a person. And yeah, I wouldn't just call it sad bastard music. That's a lot of country music anyway. So I feel like you are trained to go into country music, and this is not always true. I mean, this is maybe kind of a misconception of country music, but you're definitely kind of expected to go into anything country or country adjacent with an expectation of some melancholy. And that's there, but it's not like a put on. And it's certainly not like, you get the sense from a lot of these lyrics that he's earned the right to be somewhat melancholic. It's not melodramatic, but yeah, I don't know. I think it helps also that I listen to this record as I'm trying to start a band again and going through this process of trying to convince people to listen to your music, just trying to convince other musicians to listen to your music, which is very frustrating and brings out all of your, if you have any lack of confidence, it's going to really hammer that and bring out all of your imposter syndrome tendencies. So listening to this record, I listened to this record at a moment where I was particularly feeling mopey about not hearing back from some other musicians who I have submitted demos to. Come on, man, I heard your old band.
I was going to say, though, you're also sending music to Craigslist reply guys, too, who I'm betting reply to everyone. Yeah. So...
But there were some lyrics on this record that particularly hit me in that spot, especially on the song Low, the second track, that there's the line, getting by on principle, I killed that dream years ago. That's a knife in the gut. Sick of being tired on the next track, Young Love, lost in a flood. sick of being tired and tired of being lonely. I believed all that bullshit that rock and roll sold me. I don't know. He's got some really, really sharp lyrics. I like the way that he operates within the kind of hackneyed expressions of country and rock and roll, and works within the familiarity of those phrases and terminology. It's very Springsteen to do this, to take those things and still direct them to a earnest and poignant place and true human feelings and emotions. And it's not all like bullshit swagger, like chest beating rock and roll. It's finding something significant and meaningful in that sound and in those kind of teenage ambitions. I don't know. I really, really enjoyed this record. I will definitely come back to it. I will definitely listen to more of his music.
Yeah, I gave a sample to some of his earlier band, the Black Gold Band, and that one felt a little more. I felt more Social D, more Bruce Springsteen, and even more John Cougar Mellencamp on that one. Like, there's definitely that type of songwriting more in that version of the band. This, I got the stronger Uncle Tupelo stuff, your Tom Petty, your Chuck Ragan. Yeah, I definitely was just like, this is good. Like, from the second it transitions from Everything the Hard Way to Low, I was like, oh, we're doing this. So I was very much like, this is extremely something I want to hear more of. His solo records are more singer-songwriter, more like traditional country. There's more instrumentation than just an acoustic guitar on those albums too. So there's a lot more for me to grab onto to listen to as well.
Okay, I'm gonna read a few more lyrics because This Town Tonight is stacked with really good ones that I think very, very clearly illuminate what resonated with me about this record, and also I just really like the way he works with familiar phrases to say something meaningful. But it's the song This Town Tonight, which musically reminds me a lot of like Nobody's Darlings, Lucero, kind of the heavier, more rock and roll Lucero stuff. But I mean, thematically, it's about playing music and wondering if you should give up on the dream of playing music. But I really, really like the line, "Live like the night is almost over, play your guitar with a chip on your shoulder." And there's a little bridge where he says, "My generation, the boys in bands who became bartenders and sold the vans." I feel that. As a about to be 31-year-old working in restaurants, very much with a chip on my shoulder, trying to play music and wondering if I should quit.
Well, we've had guests on this show who are in bands and they still work in restaurants, so I wouldn't worry too much about that part of things.
Oh yeah, and we've talked to a lot of people who have not hit their stride until now in their 30s, the same age. I'm infinitely inspired by Elise from Oceanator, who I've mentioned. We've talked about many times before how much we love her. She's like 34, right? I mean,
yeah, well, that was like last year, but yeah.
Anyway, there's hope for me.
I think you just got to do it. Yeah. That's so.
Anyway, not to make this record about me, but I found a lot to personally relate to on this record, and that's a big part of what endeared me to it. And I'm very excited to hear what Dave has to say about this record, because we're recording this before he's had the chance to do his part.
Yeah. We'll probably have already played it by this point, because I kind of want to get or should we put it at, I don't know. I want people to hear Dave's take too, because, podcast drop-off is a real thing, so I don't want to put him at the end, so I'll put him at the front before we really get into our opinion section. So I want to know why he picked it specifically. I mean, he didn't pick it specifically. He gave us 19 albums to choose from.
And then we gave him 2 choices.
And even then, I had to make that final say for him. But yeah, I feel like I've exhausted everything I can say. I'm very happy with how our first purchased episode has gone so far. going forward, you never know. It might be something where we're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's good. But we'll always give you our honest opinion. We even if we don't like it, I don't think we're going to dunk on it. So, yes, thank you so much, Dave, for choosing that Patreon tier and supporting us. Dave's one of our first patrons, so we're eternally grateful.
Yes, thank you very much
for
Dave.
him. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and you can find his blog. It's Oklahoma Lefty. You should check it out. I'll include a link to it. He's a really brilliant writer. He's also written about this album too, so definitely worth mentioning. And his podcast. He's only done a couple episodes of it. Sacred Panels. Very good, very well done, put together. His show sounds better than our show most of the time, so he puts in the work too. And I think that'll do it for us. We did all the plugs up top.
To go off of the way we typically wrap our show, we usually ask our guests to shout out a nonprofit or organization that gives back to the community. We always want to stress that on our show, so I'm going to take this opportunity to shout out something that is very, very important locally here in Arizona that doesn't really get enough attention. It's not being talked about enough, even here within our local politics. But it's specifically the Save Oak Flat movement. This is, and we'll post some links to it, but this is relating to water quality and preservation of a sacred place for the Apache. I should look that up. But basically, there are currently 2 bills to go to Congress in an effort to preserve this indigenous sacred land, which is under the threat of mining operations in Arizona. Our governor is opposed to this movement. Kristen Sinema, one of our 2 Democrat senators, is opposed to this movement. Mark Kelly, our other senator, has not weighed in on this. Yeah, there are ways that you can contribute financially. You can support the Apache Stronghold, which is an organization seeking to preserve this holy site. So we'll post links to that. And branching off of that, I do want to speak specifically to this cause in any place in the country. There's a constant threat against sacred spaces for indigenous people. There's probably something local to you that you can be involved with. Arizona has quite a few of these issues. Border wall still under construction, thanks Joe Biden, through sacred Odom land in southern Arizona. Of course, you're probably familiar with what's going on in the Dakotas with pipelines and things like that. So,
the week we're recording this, they actually announced that they abandoned the XL pipeline.
Yeah, I did see that. So
thanks to the work of activists. That
Yes.
is 100% activists did that.
Yes, that is direct action.
Yeah.
So please look into the needs of the indigenous community in the area that you live in. Please familiarize yourself with those people. Look into ways that you can encourage your local government to contribute to reparations and land back initiatives for indigenous people. It's something that only ever gets talked about by the left on Columbus Day and Thanksgiving. It is a constant issue. It's something that sticks out to me as not getting enough support from the left.
Yep, very good. We'll include links to that in the show notes. I think this was a success. I very much enjoyed doing this. I want more. Please do more. Please, Dave, you can keep that one if you want. I guess I'll add another one, but to the tier. Definitely want more of this. This is really fun. I really enjoyed this process. And it's over on Patreon. It's $10 right now. I'll keep it at $10 for a while. I don't see the need for jumping it up yet. So now if I start getting like too many, or like someone gets on it and doesn't want to let it go, maybe I'll raise the price then. But as for now, we'll keep it at $10 for the time being. So please give that a look and think about. And that'll do it for us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.